Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and felt unseen? Not ignored exactly, not disrespected outright, just overlooked. Maybe it happened at work, a project that you were more than qualified for went to somebody younger. A promotion you quietly hoped for was handed to somebody with less experience but more energy. Maybe it happened at church. A leadership opportunity opened up and somehow your name never came up. Even though you've been faithfully serving for years, maybe it happened socially. You're in the group, but you're not quite in the conversation anymore. People talk around you, over you, or default to the younger women in the room. And the question creeps in, soft but sharp. Am I invisible now? Did I age out of mattering? If that question has ever crossed your mind, we're talking about it today because invisibility in midlife is real, but it's also layered. And we need to unpack it together, gently, honestly, and without turning on ourselves. Welcome to Aging with Grace and Style, where we have real conversations about midlife without shrinking, spiraling, or reinventing ourselves unnecessarily. I'm Valerie, and today we're talking about what it feels like when the world starts shifting its attention and you're not sure where you stand anymore. Let's be honest, it hurts. It hurts to feel overlooked. It stings to feel dismissed. It's confusing when you know you're capable, you know you bring wisdom and experience, but you're no longer the shiny new thing in the room. And there's a deeper fear underneath all of that we don't always say out loud. Is this the beginning of being phased out? Is this just how it is now that I'm over 50? That fear hits deep because for decades, most of us have built our identity around contribution, productivity, and being needed. We were the doers, the problem solvers, the ones that people came to. So when recognition shifts, it can feel personal. It can feel like a verdict. And then because we're good at minimizing our own pain, we start gaslighting ourselves. Maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe I'm being sensitive. I should be over this by now. But here's the truth. There are real cultural biases around age, especially for women. We know that. Pretending that doesn't exist doesn't serve us, but letting it define us doesn't serve us either. So today, it's about holding both. Yes, some of this is the culture. And yes, we still have agency in how we see ourselves and where we choose to show up. So let's zoom out for a second and take this off just you. We live in a culture that glorifies youth. Youth equals innovation. Youth equals energy. Youth equals beauty. Youth equals what's next. And midlife women, we often become the background, not because we've lost value, but because systems are wired to spotlight novelty. The workplace loves fresh perspective. The media loves new faces. Social spaces revolve around what's trending, what's viral, what's shiny. But here's what youth does not automatically have: discernment, pattern recognition, emotional intelligence, strategic patience, wisdom. Those things come from time, from scars, from seasons you've already survived. Time is not a liability. It's an asset. The problem isn't that you've aged. The problem is that some rooms are structured to reward speed over depth, style over substance, noise over nuance. That's not personal in design, but it feels deeply personal when you're the one not chosen. So if you've ever felt like they can't see what I bring, there's a reason for that. The system wasn't built with women like us at the center, and yet we're still here. We still carry value. We still have something to say. Here's the part that concerns me the most. When we start feeling invisible, we begin to shrink. You speak less in meetings. You stop raising your hand for opportunities. You second guess your input. You tell yourself, they probably don't want to hear from me anyway. And confidence doesn't usually collapse overnight. It erodes quietly, one small decision at a time. Now, let me be honest with you. This has shown up in my own life. As much as I like to talk, there have been times in meetings where I've caught myself staying quiet, not because I didn't have something to say, but because this voice in my head whispered, they've already decided. They're going to listen to that person more than me anyway. Why bother? So I sat there with ideas, insights, and experience, and I said nothing. And here's the thing. When I do that, I'm discounting the value that I bring. I'm actually playing right into what I think they may already be thinking. I have experience. I've done the work. So why am I the first one to downplay it? And if I'm honest, there are times that I felt like I had to try harder or work harder because I'm older. Like I needed to prove that I'm still relevant. That prove yourself energy is exhausting, and it keeps us performing instead of standing in who we already are. And sometimes we pre-reject ourselves before anybody else does. That's the part that we have to interrupt. Because once you start dimming your own light, it becomes a habit. And the world rarely says, hey, you're shrinking, come on back. If anything, it adjusts and moves on. So this isn't about hustling for visibility. It's about noticing where we have started to step out of our own story and gently stepping back in. Let's talk strategy. Not hustle, not proving yourself, not trying to be 30 again, but strategy. Number one, we should advocate clearly. Sometimes we assume people see our value and they don't. They're busy, they're distracted, they're human. At work, that might sound like, I'd like to be considered for leadership on this. Or I have experience in this area, I'd love to contribute. I have an idea I think could help. Can I share it? At church, it might sound like, I'm interested in serving in this capacity. I feel called to mentor women in this season of life. Not aggressively, not apologetically, but clearly. Closed mouths don't get fed, and closed mouths often get overlooked. 2, update, don't erase. You don't need to reinvent yourself from scratch, but you may need a visibility refresh. Staying current doesn't mean chasing every trend, but it does mean staying engaged. For me, that shows up a lot around tech. I'm naturally inquisitive, so I work hard to stay up to date. I put myself in rooms with people who are just as curious. I join groups and cohorts that stretch me and teach me new skills. Not because I'm trying to compete with a 25-year-old coder, but because I want to feel confident navigating the world that we're actually living in. That's what I mean by update, don't erase. You don't erase everything that you've been. You just keep adding layers. Relevance is not about age. It's about engagement. showing that you're still paying attention, still learning, still in the game. 3 is audit the room. This one is important. If you constantly feel dismissed in a certain environment, ask yourself, is this the right room for me in this season? Is this a place that can see and use who I am now? There are spaces where midlife women are absolute gold. Mentorship and coaching, consulting and advisory roles, entrepreneurship, community building, leadership in places that need calm and wisdom, not just hype. Sometimes invisibility isn't about you shrinking. It's about you outgrowing the room, and that's different. And you are allowed to leave rooms that can't hold the fullness of who you are anymore. I want to offer you a question that has helped me. Instead of asking, am I invisible now? Try asking, where am I most valuable now? That question shifts you from insecurity to positioning. Midlife is not decline, it's repositioning. And yes, repositioning can feel awkward and uncomfortable before it feels powerful. I've lived this. In my job, I'm used to being the go-to person, the one who takes the lead on projects. That's been my lane for a long time. There was a project not too long ago where I wasn't the person. They chose someone else to lead. And I'll be honest, it bothered the heck out of me. It stung. I had that little voice that said, did they not trust me? Am I being moved to the side? But when I stepped back and I looked at what was actually going on in my life at that time, everything I was carrying, personally and professionally, I realized something. Could I have done it? Of course. Would I have shown up and pushed through? Absolutely. But it would have been a stretch, and not in a good way. In hindsight, not being chosen for that project might have been a form of protection, a forced pause I probably wouldn't have given myself. Now, that doesn't mean every Passover is wholly imperfect. Sometimes it really is a bias. Sometimes it is a missed opportunity. But sometimes it's also a nudge. You don't have to carry everything to still be valuable. So when something doesn't go your way, you can gently ask, is this rejection or could this be redirection? It doesn't erase the sting, but it might change the story that you tell yourself about what it means. So if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've felt passed over, if you've wondered whether your time has quietly passed, then hear me clearly. You're not outdated, you are seasoned. You are not invisible, you are experienced. And experience is not always loud, but it is powerful. So don't self-select out. Don't dim your light just because the spotlight shifted. Or the seat. As a matter of fact, create the seat. Or find the table where women like you are already valued. This week, I want to leave you with 2 gentle reflection questions. First, where do I feel the most invisible right now? And what is one small shift I could make there? Speak up once, maybe set a boundary, or have an honest conversation. And second, where do I feel most seen and valued? And how can I lean into that space just a little more? You're not a background character in your own life. You're still here on purpose. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Until next time, show up fully, speak up clearly, stand tall confidently, and always, we do this with grace, with style, and yes, with a touch of sass. I'll talk to you next week.
Living our best life, it's good to